Hi everyone, I'm going to create hopefully a brief tutorial on navigating the ELD standards. So the first thing we want to do is navigate to the ELD standards, and you can just find them by doing a quick little Google search on ELD standards, and it's this first document here, and you can see it's a 200-page document, the framework. So I'm going to show you how to navigate just the most important sections in this framework so it's not such a daunting task for you. First thing we want to do is go to the table of contents. The table of contents is an interactive table of contents because you can click on any one of these sections and it'll take you straight there. So if I want to go straight to the standards, I would click on Chapter 3, the standards, and there we are. But I don't want to go there yet. So I'm going to go back to the table of contents. And for this tutorial, we're only going to be looking at chapters 1, 2, and 3. Chapters 4 and 5 you can take a look at later, but for this one we're just going to look at chapter 1, which just gives an overview of the ELD standards, talks about why we have them, how they came about, what their purposes are, all of that good stuff. So actually, I'm not even really going to go to chapter 1. You can read all that on your own. I do talk a little bit about it in the slides, but you can take a look at that chapter on your own. Chapter 2 and 3 is really where we're going to focus on in this tutorial. Chapter 2 presents the proficiency levels. There are 3 proficiency levels: emerging, expanding, and bridging. And then we're going to go directly to one of the grade level standards and take a look. So for now, I'm going to click on Chapter 2. And here we have some information on the 3 proficiency levels. But before we look at this, I want to go to the matrices that are presented in the framework. So I think for me, the visual really helps. You can see here we have the first matrix is a proficiency level descriptors, and it has a continuum of the proficiency levels, and I'll explain what that means. So you see here we have the 3, emerging, expanding, and bridging. But underneath each one has some descriptors of where we expect to see English language learners as they enter the emerging level and as they exit the emerging level. And here under expanding, we have 2 columns where we expect to see English learners as they enter the expanding level and exit the expanding level. And so you kind of get the idea. Down here, the general extent of support. Really important to familiarize yourself with this because you're going to see these words interspersed throughout the standards and the proficiency levels. And it basically describes what the support looks like and what kind of support the students will need. So we have substantial, moderate, or light, and then the occasional. So the second matrix is the ELD proficiency level continuum again, but this time it breaks it down by mode of communication. And we have 3 modes of communication. We have collaborative, interpretive, and productive. And if you go back up to page 19, it's going to explain what those 3 are: collaborative, interpretive, and productive. And then, really quickly, in case you didn't notice, so emerging and expanding for the mode of communication matrix are on the first slide or page, and then bridging is on the next. Then we have the last matrix, which has the knowledge of language indicators. So again, we have the continuum, emerging, expanding, and bridging on the next page. But we look at these 3 levels of proficiency through the lens of meta-linguistic awareness and accuracy of production. So you can take a look at the bullets and kind of what it looks like at each level. But if you go back to page 19, sorry, I'm scrolling a lot, you'll see a description of what meta-linguistic awareness and accuracy of production are. So you can take a look at that on your own time. All right, I'm going to go back up to the table of contents one more time. And this time we're going to navigate to a specific grade level standard page. And I'm going to choose, let's do grade 5. So if you just click on the grade level of your placement, that's going to take you to your grade level standard. So there's 2 sections for each grade level. There's section 1, which is the overview, and then section 2, which is the expanded standards. Both sections have the exact same standards listed. It's just this one just has them abbreviated, and the expanded section has them across the 3 levels of proficiency. So let's take a look first up here. I'm going to just look at the first one. So you see this is part 1, interacting in meaningful ways. Section A, which is collaborative. Remember the mode of communication that we looked at in the matrix above. The first standard is exchanging information and ideas with others through oral collaborative discussions on a range of social and academic topics. So exchanging information and ideas is the first standard. Remember, this is the abbreviated section of grade 5 standards. If I go down to section 2, the elaboration section, you're going to find the same standard, but it's broken down across the 3 proficiency levels. So exchanging information and ideas, but at emerging level, we would expect to see students contribute to conversations and express ideas by asking and answering yes, no, and the W questions, who, where, what, when, why, and responding using short phrases. So for that first standard, this is what we would expect to see emerging students able to do. For the exact same standard, exchanging information and ideas, an expanding ELD student would be able to contribute to class group and partner discussions, including sustained dialogue, by following turn-taking rules, asking relevant questions, affirming others, and adding relevant information. So you can see a big difference from emerging to expanding is in emerging, they're answering questions, and in expanding, they're starting to generate their own questions. See here, they have asking relevant questions. And then we have the same standard, exchanging information and ideas, but at the bridging level. And at the bridging level for this standard, we would expect students to be able to contribute to class group and partner discussions, including sustained dialogue, by following turn-taking rules, so far pretty similar to expanding, asking relevant questions, affirming others, adding relevant information, building on responses. This is where we have a new skill added to the bridging level. Building on responses, so they might take something that they've already said or another classmate has said and add to it. And also provide useful feedback. So at the bridging level, students start being able to provide feedback to one another. So that's basically how the standard sections are organized for each grade level. If you want to take a look at another example, let's see. Under each section, there's also different parts. We have 3 parts. So you have part 1, interacting in meaningful ways, and that's going to have the mode of communication, the 3 modes, the collaborative, interpretive, and productive. And then part 2 down here, learning about how English works. So you see the first standard under part 2. This is still 5th grade, but this is now part 2, standard A1, understanding text structure. So I'm going to now go down to the expanded section and look at part 2, standard A1. So we're still in part 1 up here. Part 2, understanding text structure. So we're on standard 1. Apply basic understanding of how different text types are organized to express ideas. I'm not going to read the whole thing because these are pretty extensive. I'm just going to show you the difference as we go up the continuum. For emerging, it's applying basic understanding of how different text types are organized. At the expanding level, where they learn how to apply growing understanding of how different text types are organized. And for bridging, they're applying increasing understanding of how different text types. So, and then in the standard description, it just gives you some examples of what that might look like. What does basic understanding look like? What does growing understanding look like? And what does increasing understanding look like? So those are the 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. I'm going to go back up to, sorry, I'm scrolling a lot. There is a part 3, but we're not going to look at that using foundational literacy skills. We're not going to take a look at that right now. The last thing I want to show you is how you can find common core standards that align with each of these ELD standards. And over in this, when we go back up to the overview, section 1, it's going to have corresponding common core standards for ELA and literacy. And you can see here, these are the corresponding. And I'll provide another tutorial on what that means and how to use that information when you're creating your ELD, your designated ELD lesson plan. Excuse me. And that's it. So that's kind of how you navigate the ELD standards. Oh, great. I kept it to about 10 minutes. Hopefully you found this helpful. And we'll talk about it, and you can let me know if you have any questions.